out tonight. We have got Dr. Javier Cavazos here, and he is the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Programs in the College of Education and P16 Integration at UTRGV. He has been part of 70 peer-reviewed publications and collaborated on grants worth over $5 million. When he is not writing or teaching, he enjoys spending time with his family and his daughter. He will be presenting this evening on the 12 research-based strategies for overcoming depression and fostering happiness. So, Dr. Javier Cavazos.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here. Is the volume good? Yes, okay. So, very happy to be here. I appreciate the nice introduction. So today we're going to have a conversation about mental health, depression, and happiness. And it's a very important conversation. And my role here is not to lecture to people, to tell people what to do. I'm certainly not an expert. My goal is just to get people reflecting and thinking about some of these things. I don't like when people stand up here and present as if this stuff is easy, because it's not. It's an everyday battle that I struggle with. So please, from a very humble perspective, I'm just here putting ideas for us to consider. I do want to mention that I do work at UT Rio Grande Valley. I am fully licensed to provide mental health services, but right now I'm not currently providing counseling because I have various other roles that I'm involved in. But I'm always ready to come back to Harlingen, and here's why. Right now I live in Edinburgh. I've lived in Edinburgh for a couple of years, but I grew up in Harlingen. So many of you here in the room and also online, which I understand that there's a lot of people online listening, which is awesome. Probably have heard of Vela Middle School, right? My grandmother's in the room. The Vela Middle School is named after my late grandfather, Judge Moises V. Vela. And I mention that here because this presentation is not about me, but I want you all to know a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. And I'm here because I care and value Harlingen. I care about your children. I care about our children. I care about our community. I miss Harlingen a lot, so every time I get back here, I try my best to. Having said that, like Ms. Tovar mentioned, I am doing a lot of other things, specifically with grants at UT Rio Grande Valley. So it's not easy to do other things, but when an opportunity arises in Harlingen, I try my best to come and spark conversation. But for you all, here in the room and online, I think the more important slide is this one, okay? This is the big one, and this is where I'm not an expert. I'm with you in the conversation because I have a 3.5-year-old daughter who I know at some point in life will struggle with mental health. How do I know that? Because mental health can affect any of us, can affect all of us. It's affected me. So as a parent, this is a very important conversation to have. And I can tell you that the strategies that we're going to talk about today, I try to use them in my life, and I will try to help her use them, but they don't always work. They're not always effective all the time. It is hard. Mental health and happiness is a hard daily grind, a hard daily battle. So I never want anybody to think that I'm up here saying, oh, this is easy. It is not. It is hard. Some of the hardest lessons in life to aim toward this. But for you all, I just want everybody to know that that's why I'm here, because I care about your kids here in Harlingen. I care about her. I want all of our children to know what are some of the things that they can do when mental health hits them in the face. So that's why I'm here. And what's interesting about this picture, she looks calm and happy and smiling. 5 minutes before that picture was absolute chaos, right? It's Christmas morning. You can imagine how that is. But I love how pictures look, and that's sometimes how these mental health presentations go. They make it seem so perfect and Hallmark, textbook-like, and it's not. And I'm the first person to tell you it is hard. So having said that, I do have two goals for today. I want all of us to have a better understanding of what depression is and what depression looks like. But I also know that some of you have been here during the year with these conversations, so I expanded on it, and I expanded the second part. So we have 12 strategies to increase happiness, to increase positive emotions. And when you see them, you're going to think, this guy, he has curly hair, he hasn't gotten a haircut in a while, kind of goofy, kind of funny. You're going to think I pulled these strategies out of my hat. I promise you, I did not. I have not. I love research, I respect research, and the strategies we'll talk about today are based on science and are based on research. So while they might seem superficial and you're going to see a lot of images, they're not. They're based on proven science. So if I wasn't trained in teaching pedagogy. Some of you in the room were trained to become teachers. I have a lot of respect for all of you. I wasn't trained in teaching. So when I started teaching college students, my training was, here's the book, here's the syllabus, good luck. That was my training. So I lectured a lot because that's how people taught me. I now know that lecture is not exactly the most effective way for learning. So throughout this conversation, I have questions in here that I want you to think about, to reflect on. If everybody was in the room, we would spend time discussing these things in small groups. But I want to be mindful of the people online. So when you see a question, I ask you to just reflect individually, to think about it yourself. But we won't have a lot of time to discuss because the online part. I want to be mindful of them. There's nothing worse than being in a room talking with people, and then some people are remotely connected and they feel isolated from the conversation. So just keep that in mind. So the first question, so individually, I just want you to think, and remember the bigger part of this conversation is the second part, the strategies, right? That's what we promoted, the 12 strategies. So there's like 3 slides, but it's important to contextualize depression. So I just want you to, 10 seconds, just think about what depression looks like to you, or what comes to mind when you think of depression. My guess, my hunch, is that a lot of you probably thought of sadness and tears. That's what comes to mind a lot of times. For the people in the room, head nods, no, yes, maybe, no, maybe. Those are the 2 biggest ones. Those aren't the only ones, right? Sadness, tears. The other ones that are often overlooked with depression are loss of interest in activities and excessive weight loss or weight gain. Those are the big ones. So tears, sadness, excessive weight loss or weight gain, and loss of interest in activities. One more. There's another big one that we'll get to in a minute. Why is this important? I've presented this, or not, I hate saying present, because that's really not what this is. This is more of a facilitate reflection. And I'm glad my grandmother's in the room because I share this joke every time, and she's finally in the room, so she's finally going to hear me say it, right? So she goes to HEB quite a bit, once a week, right? Maybe twice. So right before she pays for the groceries, there's candy and there's magazines. She always buys a magazine every time. $5 twice a week, $10, right? That adds up. This is a very reputable magazine, Time magazine, right? Well, that's not the one she buys. She buys the National Enquirer or the Star. Those of you who are laughing, you've seen it. You've seen those images. You've seen, I'm not going to go down that, okay? But some people would argue that the National Enquirer and Star are not the most credible sources out there. I'm saying some because she has a special story. You want to ask her afterwards, that's fine. But I'm not here to talk about the National Enquirer. What I do know is Time magazine is pretty reputable. It's in the same aisle at HEB next to the National Enquirer and People and OK and those things. A year and a half ago, this was on the front page of Time magazine. Anxiety, depression, and the modern adolescent. When I saw this, that caught my attention. That told me that our children, our adolescents, are going through quite a bit. That there's I hate to say problem, but there's an issue that we all need to be aware of. That our kids, some people are arguing, are going through quite a bit. They're going through a lot. I was going to say some people argue that our kids are going through more than what we went through as adults, but I'm not going to go there because we all have our struggles, right? But the point is this: mental health is a really big deal. I'll share a story. My wife is from Mexico. Her parents are monolingual Spanish speakers, so it's very important that our daughter speaks Spanish. She's in a school as a 3.5-year-old in a monolingual Spanish-speaking school. When she goes to a school, elementary, to me, the number one issue now is not bilingualism, dual language, it's school safety, right? How is her mental health going to be affected? That's for me. So for you all, whatever you rank number one, please consider mental health somewhere in that conversation, because we're going to talk about why that matters. I know this is a tough topic. I shouldn't say I'm reluctant, because this is a part of the conversation of where depression can lead. Not all the time. Okay, not all the time. This is not cause and effect. But here's the story. I'm a big fan of sports. I'm a huge fan of sports, love sports. I remember, was it in 2011 when our Harlingen Cardinals made it quite far in the state playoffs, I think to the final 8. I'll never forget, I saw a couple of them at Chick-fil-A. They were like rock stars, right? They had it made, popular, everything. Everybody's on the Valley bandwagon, everything, right? They seemed the happiest kids in the world because they were star high school football players. This gentleman was a star football player at Washington State University. Washington State, big-time college football program, top 25. You would think he has it made. Happy friends, people. Unfortunately, this gentleman is no longer with us. He committed suicide about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I mention that because that's what depression could possibly look like at some point. Nobody's here saying it's cause and effect. Nobody's saying we've all gotten depressed at some point. But with a certain amount of symptoms and lack of support, this is potentially what could happen. And here's what I'll tell you. And this is where, I don't know, I teach at a university, so sometimes we feel we can say things. But let me tell you as a parent, let me forget my work hat. Let me tell you as a parent. And notice I say when, I'm very intentional with my language, not if. When my daughter struggles with mental health, maybe 12 or 13, one of the first questions I'm going to ask her, you better believe I'm going to ask her this. Y'all can get mad at me, but I have research to support this, but this is my parent hat. I will ask her, are you thinking of harming yourself? Do you want to die? Are you thinking of hurting yourself? I will ask her that 100% of the time. I've heard people up here tell me, oh, you're going to put that idea in her mind. We've heard that. We've heard that idea. You're going to give kids ideas. That's not true. You're creating space for a conversation to find out how much pain are they in. This is a real story. When my grandfather passed away, my grandmother asked me about a week and a half after he passed away, do you want to hurt yourself? Because I was struggling. She asked me that. Why? Because to us, not speaking for anybody else, we care enough to ask that hard question. But that's not what we were taught. We were taught, don't talk about it. You're going to give kids ideas. That's not true. That's a myth. Forget my professional hat. That's my parent hat. I will ask the young, beautiful little girl you saw earlier. I will ask her that 100%, and I will ask her those questions. It is a hard question to ask. If you've never said those words coming out of your mouth, it does not flow nicely. I don't like asking that, but I will ask that. And nobody's saying depression leads to suicide. Nobody's saying that. But when people have enough symptoms, they might get to a point where they have those thoughts. And here's another important statement related to suicide. Most people who attempt suicide don't want to die. They just want to get rid of the pain that they're experiencing. And that is huge. That's huge. When I first heard that and read that, that really made me think. And look, I know this is a sensitive topic. All of the strategies, I'll be very honest with you. Some people don't like me saying this, but you know what? It's fine. All the strategies we talk about today, if something like this ever happened to my daughter, you know what? Forget those strategies. Forget all of them. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Forget all of them, because I would struggle, just like any parent would. So just contextualize that a little bit in terms of what depression could look like in terms of life and death. I know that's hard. I was telling my grandma earlier that I'm trying to be honest, that these conversations are starting to get very hard for me, very hard, because I started thinking about all of this. It's hard. It's not easy, especially because I'm not in that space as much. So my question to you all is, just 15 seconds. We still have people online. Yes, great. It's awesome. Thank you all for being there. And y'all, thank you for being here. But my question to you is just 10, 15 seconds. What's your connection to this topic? I know you all came, which I appreciate, Ms. Tovad appreciates, Harlingen appreciates, my cousin who helps promote this appreciates. I'm just curious, and I just want you to think, what's your connection to this topic? Just 15 seconds. What's your connection? There's that little puzzle, right? Yeah, I'm pretty humble, but I like these little pauses, because I've been in meetings. Oh, this is live, right? Not at my current employment where I used to work, right? I've been in meetings where it's just 2 hours lecture and there's no time to think, there's no time to process. And I know I'm not giving you a lot of time, but that's just the online face-to-face is situated, but just a little time and space for thinking about this. I know all of you have different connections to this topic. I have a variety of connections. I'm sure we all do. So then the bigger question is, how do we alleviate some of those symptoms and improve happiness? So this is why this next part is so important. I think, and again, I'm shifting between my professional role, my parent role, and then just my humble opinions based on my conversations with my wife and what she shows me on Facebook, which we'll get to in a minute. I think a lot of the conversation around mental health is centered on depression and the bad. I'm here to create space for us to think about the good and the happiness. And I'm going to beat you to the punch. This is where somebody's going to say, oh, God, Mr. Vi, why'd you bring this guy here? He told me to ignore all the bad in my life, the reality. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you have, and my grandma and I were talking about this earlier, we're always trying to do this, and it's not easy. If you have 20 negative things in your life, why can't we focus on that one positive? Having said that, if some of you are in a crisis right now, you can throw all this out. You have my permission. You have all of our permission. Because when we're in a crisis, it's challenging to find that to find that smiley face. It's hard. But if you're in this room and you're in an okay space, then I think it is okay to look at that positive in your life. And I've said this twice. Some of you might think I don't know what I'm saying, that I'm a parrot, but I'm not. I'm aware. I know that sometimes it takes multiple times to say things before it sticks. This is not easy. Those of you who are parents in the room or online, you remember what it's like with young ones, right? You see on TV and you hear stories, oh, you go to bed, you read a book, you tuck the little girl or boy in, and it's so peaceful. Well, that's not every night. That's not every night. Sometimes it's pure chaos. So I am not saying, oh, in that pure chaos, we need to focus on the positive. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if there's 20 negative things, how can we keep in mind that one positive thing? And I'm talking to you as I'm talking to myself, because it's not always easy. So there's 12 research-based strategies. My hope is that all of us will take at least one that we can implement right away. Some of them are going to sound silly for you, and that's fine. They're not all going to work for you. But what I really do not want is for somebody to think that this is Hallmark, cookie cutter strategies, because that is not my intention. My intention is to throw out things that have proven to be effective, and hopefully you can take one to implement right away. Because having prepared this, I can see how it looks Hallmark. And what I mean by that is quick fixes. But I hope through my language, I'm helping us understand that there's nothing, it's not easy. It's not easy. So here we go, 12. And this is how, if you've been here before, you'll know that this is some of this new. So make sure to tell Ms. Davad, who asked me to add new things. That way she knows I did work hard to add new things, all right? So 12, and this is number 12, and I'll be the first one to tell you some of this stuff doesn't work for me. You know why? Because other things work for me. And this is one of them that just doesn't sit well with me. But you know what? There is a lot of research out there that supports mindfulness, not only with adolescents, but with adults. What is mindfulness? Simple definition is being aware in the present moment. That's a tight definition. We see images like that. It looks like yoga, right? What that image represents is somebody being present and concentrated in the moment. How many of us wake up in the morning, I don't know, let's say 7 a.m., and before we even think of our day, we just sit and pause and just reflect? I don't, right? I do not. A lot of us wake up thinking, oh my gosh, what do we got to do for the day? What does my kid need to eat? All of that, right? But from what I've read and people I've talked to, mindfulness can be effective for clearing the mind. And why? Because instead of worrying about tomorrow or what happened yesterday, we're just thinking about right now. You know, if we had more time and I had access to people online, we could do a cool activity to see how many of us are mindful in this moment right now, right? Y'all think I'm mindful with y'all, but you don't know, right? I am, right? I am, right? But that's what that means, just being present in the moment and aware of your emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Let's say you don't like that one, there's still 11 more. So 11 more. This is probably my favorite. And I'm going to be very honest with you, and HCISD might never invite me back, and that's okay because I don't lie. I'm very transparent. Number 11 is to normalize mental health. This idea of it's okay to not be okay. What does that mean? So here's what it means. This is live, right? This is recorded and everything. But it's okay. I'm going to share the story anyway. So I'm 20 years old. And my cousin who's back there, she leads marketing here at HCSD. I'm very close with her brothers, my cousins. They were my best men at my wedding, right? So that tells you how close I was. Well, when I was 20 years old, they were about 13 and 11. And this is a true story. It's tough to share. Whenever I suspected that they were sad or mad, I would always joke with them and I would tell them, you need to go see Mr. Montes, the school counselor at Long Elementary. What was that promoting? That it's all right, it's not okay to not be okay. It was a horrible perspective to have on mental health because my idea was people who go see counselors are crazy or something's wrong, right? We all remember that, right? Horrible. And now I'm up here promoting the exact opposite. So this one, related to my story and to what I keep hearing from our kids, there still seems to be a stigma around seeking mental health services that I just heard last week a young girl did not want to go to see her school counselor because she said, quote, "When I come back to class, the kids will know that something is wrong with me." Apparently, a lot of our kids still believe that going to a counselor is not normal, is not okay, and it's a sign of something's wrong. And that's not true. It is not true. I think a lot of you, and I hope a lot of you will agree, when we're aware of our sadness and feelings, that's actually a strength. That's a sign that we're aware of what's going on with ourselves. So how do we translate that to young ones? That when they feel something different, they recognize, you know what, something's not right. And we need to tell them that that's okay. It is all right. I'm very impressed. I said I love sports. I'm very impressed with the NBA, National Basketball Association, because I sense that some players are coming out with mental health issues. And at least how they promote it through the media, that's all right. You hear the last story on this one. You hear this all the time with teachers. I don't want my students to see that I'm stressed out. It goes to the idea that people will think something's wrong with me. And that's fine. I'm up here sharing information. Does it mean I'm 100% happy? No. I'll be very honest with you. On a 1 to 10, I'm probably like a 6. And that's okay, right? So the idea here is if we or our children are not okay, that is all right. It's perfectly all right. I would argue that that's a sign, that's a strength. That's a sign of a strength. It's really good. All right, this is where it gets fun. Hope everybody's still with me. Number 10, take social media breaks. For some of us, that means permanent breaks. Others, an hour. So here's why. And this is me talking as a person. You see the image up here, how quitting Facebook decreased my anxiety by 300%. I've shared stories before, and I'm trying to remember which stories I shared with the group. But 2 months ago, the last image that I saw before I went to sleep was a picture that my wife showed me from her Facebook page. She showed me an image of a young girl, 8 years old, who died from starvation. That is the image she showed me. About a week ago, she read me an article about a 3-year-old girl who was repeatedly raped by her uncle. What do you think that does to me as a dad of a 3-year-old little girl right before I go to bed? Do you think that increases my happiness? No. It elevates my anxiety, because what do you think I start thinking about? Wow, could this happen to my daughter? What do I need to do to protect her? I think even the following day, I said, you know what, she's going to go to a private school. I don't know what I said. I know that's a bad connotation, right? Because I'm associating public school with all this, and it's not true. But that's how I was thinking. I'm not here saying, love your shirt, right? The Astros, love Astros. I'm not telling you eliminate Facebook. I am not. I'm not telling anybody that. What I'm saying is social media is a factor in mental health. It is. I don't have the ratio with me. I don't know the ratio, but I'm willing to guess there's a lot more negative than positive. And when we read that, all it does is influence our thinking and feelings. Just like when my wife shows me that. It is brutal to hear that, to think of that, to see that. But I know there's some good on there, right? I understand that. But just think about it. How could taking social media breaks help you or your children? I'm not going to share too many stories, but even social media breaks an hour, 30 minutes. Some people cannot do that. They're so wired on it, right? But the point with this one is we know that social media can be an influencing factor with mental health. Just think about how does that connect with you, in your life. Told you, right? Told you I like the Astros. So that we've talked about 3 so far. And If you haven't taken any yet, that's fine. There's still 9 more. It's hard for me to say which one's my favorite or which one I enjoy doing the most. But I can tell you that number 9 is very important to me, and here's why. I'm going to give you a silly example, then we'll move to a more personal example. The silly example is this. To the young ones in the room, we should always listen to our parents, and very close, right behind our parents, I would rank the dentist. Right? I would put the dentist right behind the parents, because here's why. For about 6 years, my dentist told me I needed to buy a night guard. I was being very stubborn. I did not buy a night guard. So about 2 years ago, the dentist told me I needed 4 veneers, which to me are like fake teeth, right? My front teeth. And it was not a very fun experience. How is that related to savoring? For 6 weeks, I couldn't eat meat. I couldn't eat chicken. I couldn't eat steak, which I love. So when I was finally able to eat the food I wanted, I savored that food like I had never eaten it before. That's a silly example. The more personal example is tonight when we go home, what are we doing? Are we being present with our loved one, or are we watching TV while our loved one is on the phone, or whatever it is? Savoring means enjoying the moment, any moment. Savoring means when I leave here with my grandmother, instead of complaining and grumbling, oh, blah, blah, blah. Savoring means enjoying the conversation with her from here to her house on North First, 2327 North First. Right? I hope nobody wrote that down, right? Suddenly everybody wrote things down, like watch out, be careful, right? I shouldn't joke. Savoring means when my wife told me at midnight, your grandma went live on Facebook. Oh, let's enjoy that. Let's enjoy that. Savoring means anything in the moment with your person, with your significant other. Savoring means tonight, to be very honest with you, you've got a big grant deadline tomorrow morning. Savoring means at 9 o'clock, instead of thinking about the grant, putting my phone away and just reading a book with my daughter, trying to. That's what savoring means. And I have this image because to me, everybody here looks pretty happy. They just won the World Series and they're savoring the moment. But savoring can mean anything. Today has not been the best day, but I'm trying my best to savor the moment with you all, with Mr. Vad. I'm trying to be here, to appreciate the gift of talking with y'all. But that's what savoring means. Number 8, and there's a pause coming up in just a minute. So, excuse me. Happy Mother's Day to people in the room, right? Happy Mother's Day to anybody who's a mother. In the room or online, right? Mr. Vad, happy Mother's Day. I mentioned Mother's Day because my mom was a licensed professional counselor and a school counselor, and she always used to tell me about creative journal arts. I was very rude, mean with her in terms of being dismissive of that, and to the point where that doesn't work, right? Like very dismissive, very sad on my part as a son. Then I finally started reading a little bit and doing some research in this area. And I've since learned that creative journal arts can have some value with mental health and happiness and hope. What does that look like? Painting, drawing, poetry, sculpting, acting. Whatever works for us, for you. And I can tell you personally, having been very stubborn, coloring with my daughter at night has been incredible. Just fun and relaxing. And I know some people say, oh, I'm not good at that, but that's not the point of this. The point is not to color within the lines. I mean, that's one part of it, but we're not judging the product. We're just looking at the process. And somebody asked I think a month ago, great question they asked, oh, my 14-year-old doesn't want to talk to me. How do you get them to talk about mental health? One way is to, sorry you're going to hear this, right? Is to disguise the intervention, to trick them, right? So you ask them, hey, draw me a picture about your life or something, and then you ask them probing questions because now their sensors are a little lowered, right? I hate saying deceive, but it's just getting people to open up in different ways. One of the most powerful images I ever saw was from a 7-year-old who didn't want to talk much, so I asked her, I was like, all right, Mom, I'm going to try your strategy. I asked her to draw a house and her family. I was like, oh, let's see what happens. She drew, she had 2 siblings, so she drew all the siblings inside the house, the mom in the kitchen, and the dad was outside sleeping in a cot. I was like, okay, that was interesting. So I probed a little bit, and as you can imagine where that went, right? The parents were struggling a little bit. But that's what creative journal arts can do. And the last thing I'll mention on this one, if you've ever tried coloring or drawing with your non-dominant hand, it's a very interesting experience. Very powerful in terms of eliciting different parts of your brain in the creativity. So I wasn't the biggest believer, but there is research to support this. It will look different, but this is another strategy that we can use to boost our happiness. So moving along nicely, bless you. This is my favorite slide. I'm going to be very transparent with everybody. So Saturday, I had the privilege of sitting at graduation at UT Rio Grande Valley, such a proud moment. When your kids graduate from college, and again, I'm very intentional with my language. I'm not saying if. Did I say if? I said when. When your kids graduate from college, they're going to hear a commencement speaker, somebody who shares words of wisdom, and 75% of the audience, including parents and the teachers, are not paying attention, right? Let's be real. So the first 3 years, I sat in on graduation and I wasn't paying attention. There's even an image of me texting my friend 2 rows down, okay? I wasn't paying attention. But I heard this quote one year, and I was like, all right, Dr. Seuss, blah, blah, blah. Then I heard it 2 more times, and I really paid attention to it. And the quote is this: don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And when I really analyze this quote, it taps into what you see on the top, change your thinking. Right? That's what it is, 100%. First, let me say this. If you're in the middle of a crisis or something happens to your kid, forget this strategy, throw it out the window, okay? That's why I'm being honest with you all. But if we're in a decent place, this is a beautiful strategy to adopt. What does this mean? It means this. Now, instead of crying because my grandfather is no longer here, I should smile because I got to experience 32 years of my life with him. It is a shift in thinking. It is the most beautiful shift you can experience. My mother, same thing. Some of you have seen what cancer does to people, which is ridiculous. Those are the real doctors, are the MDs who are heroes for treating people who endure cancer. I shouldn't cry because my mom's no longer here. I'm 35, I think. So I should smile because I got to experience 33 years of my life with her. Don't tell me that at a funeral, right? Don't tell me that at a funeral. Tell me that when I'm ready. In fact, let me read this and tell you, and then we'll talk about it. What I hate about people who do this presentation or do presentations like this, they say this at all the wrong times, right? They say it at all the wrong times. And I'm not telling you all this. I'm being very honest with you all that in the middle of a crisis, I don't want to hear this, you know what, right? I don't want to hear it. But when I'm out of the crisis, this is the 100% better way to think. At a funeral, we don't want to hear this. We don't want to hear everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Okay, that's nice. So seeing our loved ones suffer, there's a reason behind it. All right, I'm being very sarcastic. I'm being very aware of how I'm feeling because that's what people told me, and I bet people told you that. But when we're removed from that and we're in a better place, this is a really cool perspective to see, and it really comes down to change our thinking. Number 6, that was a big one, right? That was a big one. 6 more, flowing through nicely. All of you are seem to be engaged. I hope the people online are too. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love the school district I went to, Harlingen High School. However, I took, from what I remember, this is me, right? This is me. I remember in 8th grade, I took a career inventory. And every job is important, but the inventory I took, the results were just strange. I'm not going to go into the results. It's strange. Connect that to my daughter's experience about a week ago. She has little daily progress reports. And she got 5 X's, like 5 things she did wrong. Like, oh my gosh, did she do anything right? The point is this. A lot of times, not all the time, we focus on the negative. What's wrong? What's wrong? What am I doing wrong? If you want to focus on what you're doing right or what you're doing well or what you're good at, there's a free inventory online. It takes 15 minutes. The adults in here can do it. The kids can do it. It's called the Values in Action Classification of Character Strengths. And the idea is this. We need to be aware of our strengths and cultivate them more in our everyday life. What does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Here's what it means. It means, now some of you, let's say you're aware of your strengths and you're doing it every day. That's beautiful. That's awesome. Then that tells me you're here for other people, right? I get that. When I used to counsel, one of the things I noticed was when people are not doing well emotionally, they stop doing the things they love doing or they stop doing the things they enjoy doing. Here's the easiest example. I worked with a 15-year-old. He was very sad, very sad. And I asked him, what do you like doing? He mentioned a couple of things. I don't want to mention too much of the story. So I asked him, let's pretend he loved basketball. I asked him, when's the last time you played basketball? 4 months ago, 4 months ago. When we're sad or depressed, we stop doing the things we love doing. So one idea is to take this inventory. It pops out 5 of your strengths in life, and your goal and role is to do more of your strengths every day. What does that look like? Here's what it looks like. My number 3 is appreciation of beauty and excellence. I know it's going to sound weird and silly to some of you, but I really enjoy nature and birds. I really love birds. I really love birds. So if I'm ever sad, I would hope somebody would ask me, when's the last time you engaged in nature? When's the last time you saw birds, pretty birds? So for you as parents, if your kids are really good at something, I'm really removed from middle-aged kids other than video games, right? But let's say video games. If your kids are good at video games, which I think taps into a lot of creativity, you want to inquire if they're ever sad. When's the last time they played those video games? When's the last time they did things that they enjoyed doing? The same thing with older people. We were very worried about my grandma when she was sad, very sad. You know how we noticed she was sad? There was a 2-month gap from the time she went to the Maquinitas to the next time she went. 2 months and the time she went to a little casino. So then we knew this is a red flag because we got to get her to those casinos, right? We got to get her there. But that's a silly example. The better example is for you all, for us, and when we're sad, when's the last time we stopped when we did those things? I love how when I used to counsel, people would come ask me, not all of them, but some people would ask me, well, what do I do to get better? I told them I'm not an expert. Only a lot of people have the answers to help them feel better. A lot of people do. So my role is just to help them uncover what they used to do when they're happy. The easiest question you could ask your kids or yourselves is this. If you're sad, you ask yourself, when was I happy? What was I doing then? How can I do more of that now? It's a beautiful connection. It's not easy, but that connection is there. So pause, right? Pause. So I can get water in my throat. So just like a 30-second pause, because I'm telling you, I wish meetings were like this. Or I had I don't want to call people out, but I am. I am. I had several professors in graduate my master's degree for 2.5 hours every week. Just read slides to me. Just read slides. I know you all can read, right? So with pedagogy, I know now, and the teachers in the room know this, we have to give people time to pause, reflect, regroup. And also, I hope you've noticed that I don't use a lot of text in PowerPoint. Images. And you're asking, why am I saying all this? Because I'm trying to use strategies to help people learn and help this information stick. When you see 1,000 words of PowerPoint on the slide, my grandmother, we're all faced with the decision. Do we read the slide? Do we listen to the presenters? Too much. It's cognitive overload. So I hope you don't find the images silly, because they're really based on cognitive science and how people can move toward learning, right? So, all right, that's my tangent. I'm back, okay? I'm back. So 5 more, right? 5 more. So 5 more, and you know, seeing these pictures, even though I prepare them, I just looked at them last night. They're not easy. They're not easy. So number 5 is connecting with others. So you're probably asking, why is that important? First of all, that's my grandmother right there. She's wearing the same blouse. That's crazy. That's what she gets, because she used to comment on one of her sons always in the same suit, right? So, all right. So that's my grandmother. That's my daughter. And that's her late husband, my late grandfather, right? So the idea is, when we're sad, we stop connecting with others. So last year, and I shared this once, right? When my mom died, the days after, and this is always tough to share, but it's true, you know, just trying to share a little bit about my process with this. I asked my wife, my daughter was, I think, 2 at the time, more or less. I asked her, in a nice way, right? I asked her, can you take Lixie just for the day to go play, be with your parents, just so I could be alone? I stopped connecting with the people most important to me. What I want to tell you all is, we don't mention this all the time with depression, but the magic number for depression is 14 days. Right? I did that for 2 days, then I slowly got out of it. But if I would have done that for 14 days, that's a big sign and symptom of major depression. So I'm here normalizing some of these symptoms. But we know that when people get sad, sometimes they stop connecting with others. So don't let that happen. Don't let that happen for an extended period of time, right? Because we all know that we need a little time and space to heal. But we also know that we got to stay connected to others. And I know it's not easy. Somebody might be thinking, well, I have a loved one passing away in the hospital. I don't want to see him like that. I can relate to that. I know it's brutal. But staying connected with people is very important. I think a lot of you know that. All right, number 4. These are my favorite. You know, even though I'm tired, I'm a little tired. Just because I didn't sleep well last night. Because when I'm writing a grant, I kind of get like amped up. I don't know how else to share that. But these last 4 are really boosting my positive emotions. So, from the research I've done, from the research I've read, one of the biggest predictors and protective factors of happiness is this idea of hope. And I don't want to go into the definition of hope, because all of you have your own definition. But what I can share is to find what gives you hope and keep reminding yourself that every day. Ourselves that. I have an image of my daughter in this crazy dress that costs a lot of money, right? I have this image because this is who gives me hope. That's what keeps me going. That's why I'm here tonight. That's why I'll keep plugging along. And my hunch is the person next to you is what gives you hope. And I'm not here telling you, oh, he's saying we don't have hope. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when we get a little sad, we lose hope. We lose a lot of hope. And I do want to share, I know some people get scared when I say these comments, but you know what? It's transparent. I would lose, I hate saying all hope. I would really get close to losing all hope in life if something ever happened to her. And I'm being very honest with you all. Very honest and transparent. And I think that's fair and probably normal for a lot of parents to share. I would work really hard to pick myself up, but it would be really hard to get hope back. So I guess what I'm saying is if you've had any of that happen, I want to validate how you feel, because I don't know, but I imagine it's the hardest thing in life times 100. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying, oh, identify hope is easy. I'm not. I am not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if you're in a decent place and you can think about what gives you hope, to find ways to cultivate that every day. On the last three, I'm really struggling because I don't know who's heard this story, right? Because I used to hate when professors would share stories and they would start with, have I shared this with y'all? I don't remember, but I can tell you the number 3 strategy I would recommend is acts of kindness. And some of you might think, oh, I do this every day. And that's fair. Well, let me tell you this. 2 weeks ago, I presented at Keys Academy, which, by the way, the last Tuesday at Keys Academy was amazing. Just amazing. Like, I left almost in tears because for an hour, there was a 6-year-old boy. When I would pause, I would ask questions because we didn't have online. He would answer the question every time, and it was right on point. And that told me that, wow, he was paying attention, he was engaged, he was thinking. But the story I want to share is a little different. Two weeks before that, a young girl said, oh, I do acts of kindness every day. I'm like, all right, great, what do you do? She said, I wash the dishes. It's like, so I looked at her very politely. I was like, is that act of kindness? Is that your job, your role, your chore, right? Act of kindness is something above and beyond our normal roles. You see in this picture, this is not this gentleman's normal role. He's helping a young woman who's struggling and doesn't want her to get wet. Another example, we were just at McDonald's. I didn't do this, but we were at McDonald's. McDonald's is getting crazy, right, with those 2 lanes merging. I've been involved in, not me, but I've seen some altercations like, really, y'all are fighting over 30 seconds? Like, really? And then when I'm trying to get in, if my wife's in the car, she says, get in there, you gotta win. I'm like, what? Like, what are you doing? Oh, anyway, an act of kindness is asking the cashier, first you gotta ask, what'd they order, right? Because you don't wanna go too crazy, right? What'd they order? Oh, they ordered a number 1, $5.99. Act of kindness is paying for them behind. That's one that costs a little money. Another act of kindness we'll get to in a minute. But the idea of act of kindness is when we're sad or depressed, we're selfish, in terms of we're only thinking about ourselves. So an act of kindness takes us out of that, and we do something nice for somebody else. Number 2 more. Thank you very much. This has been awesome. I always love presenting Grumpy Cat because a lot of people don't know this poor cat's real name. It's always interesting, poor cat. Let's just say I had a family member who had a partner who reminds me of this image because he was very negative. Like out here, you probably say, it's a pretty nice day, right? It's a pretty decent day. Well, he would say there's too many clouds, too much wind, right? So the idea with this is, and I've shared this before, right? Not channel 23. My grandfather y'all would watch the news every night, channel 4. Sorry, Brown. Oh, you used to work channel 4. Channel 4 every night, right? Channel 4 every night. On average, the first 4 stories, negative, crime. And then the 5th story was still negative. It was that food patrol with the demerits and all that, right? Still negative. All right, nice. So the news, the media kicks us in with what's wrong in the world. You heard the humble examples of what my wife shares with me before we go to bed. A better approach, which we try, it's not easy, is this acronym called Hunt the Good Stuff, right? So tonight, before we go to bed, don't show me that image, don't show me that image. Instead, ask me, what's one good thing that happened to you today? Well, I got to have a conversation with wonderful people. Nobody fell asleep, at least in the room. Got to see my grandmother. Ms. Tabata was very nice to invite me back. The technology worked. Instead of seeing a girl who died from starvation. In the morning, the same thing, except flip it. What's one good thing that you want to happen today? Like, make it happen. Somebody might say, oh, this guy, he's telling me to ignore that I'm struggling with bills. No, I'm not. And here's the easiest example of that. I worked with a young man who had a lot of negative things. And the only positive thing I could get him to share was that he had a roof over his head and he was living with his parents. I'm not the most assertive person, but when I counsel, I never let people get away with, if they're not in crisis and hadn't lost a child or loved one right in the moment, I never let them get away with nothing. There's nothing good in my life. I wouldn't let them get away with that. Because you know what? Usually there's at least one good thing. So the last one, you think you prepare yourself, right, for like, what the heck am I doing showing this the day after Mother's Day? And the day before her anniversary passing, like, man, just a word that my daughter says, es un palabra mala, or something like that, right? Bad word, right? She said that. So the last one, when we're sad or depressed, we don't, how do I say it? I don't want to put people in the same boat, but a lot of times when we're sad and depressed, like when I'm sad, I'm thinking about what's wrong with me, right? Oh, I'm sad, I'm depressed. I'm not thinking about other people. We know that people who express gratitude on a daily basis have little boosts of emotions. So what does that look like? The same girl, right, who I told you, she said, oh, I do acts of kindness every day. I do the dishes. The same girl said, the same presentation, the same girl said, I express gratitude to my mom every day. I'm like, wow, that's great. She said, I send her texts and all these emojis. I'm like, that's a little different than writing a note or doing something different than that. Nothing, that's great, but how can we express gratitude differently? So one of my goals that I've always wanted to do in one of my classes, I always have my students write a gratitude letter. And my students are like people like you, young adults, right? Y'all like that? Young adults, young adults, right? Yes. Yes. And they write a gratitude letter to somebody who's impacted their life. But one thing I always want to do is the people who they write the letter to, I want to bring them to class and have my students read it to them. When my mom passed away, and y'all have heard this, that I wrote her a letter, and then I had my grandmother read it to my mom. You already heard the word I describe myself. But I know that my mom heard my words. And the other example I'll share on gratitude is, I think I share this is a real example. And this one's just as tough, but when we got married, I wrote gratitude letters to everybody on my side of the family who went to the wedding. I really did, wrote everyone. Because I had heard stories of my cousin who graduated from Harvard who sent blank letters to people who went to his graduation. So I was like, I want to do that, although it was pretty funny. So I wrote letters to everybody except 3 people, my mom and my 2 cousins, Brianna's brothers, because when you write a letter of gratitude, you're making yourself vulnerable. You start thinking about all the kind things they've done, and sometimes you're saying goodbye. So when I got married, it was saying goodbye to them, and I couldn't do it. So I'm here just sharing, if it fits for you, this really can work, but it also makes us a little vulnerable when we think about some of those things. So the final 30 seconds. And I know I got through fast because the conversation, but if you wanna stay and talk to my grandmother afterwards, that's fine. I could tell she has a lot to share. We were bickering on the way over here. She said, "Are there gonna be 2 microphones?" Like, no. The last question is this. Another image, right? Application. So application to me means how can how can we apply some of these things to our lives? So that's what I'll leave you with. The last question for you all is, how do you think you can apply what we talked about today to your personal life? It could be as simple as, you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna write a gratitude letter to my mom, to my grandma. It could be as when I go home tonight, I'm gonna savor the moment with my daughter. It could be as easy as that. But that's what I leave you with, and also with gratitude. Thank you. I'm not sure how I can thank you all enough for just being here, because it shows you're committed to this conversation, and it's a very important one. So, thank you all very much.
I know that there weren't as many sane people as in the past. So I'm glad that y'all were here tonight and you all got to hear him.